So there I am, standing at the edge of my own land, watching Karen's 20 grand wedding tent flutter like it's royalty. Music blasting, guests in heels trampling my soybean crop, and her caterer has the nerve to ask if I can move my tractor because it's messing with the vibe. That's when I calmly flipped the switch and fired up the manure spreaders. Smash cut to the intro screen. How we get here? Let's roll it back. I'm the sheriff of a quiet county nestled in the Appalachian foothills. Thick forests, winding roads. The kind of place where folks wave whether they like you or not. I did 20 years in the military, then came home to care for my dad after his first stroke. He passed last spring and left me the land and the hunting lodge he built with his own 2 hands over 30 years. He used to call that lodge his cathedral, and now I get it. It's not just lumber and nails, it's heritage. It's blood. Everything he ever taught me about grit, patience, and keeping your boots clean in a world full of crap lives there. Enter Deborah Witherspoon, HOA president, freshly divorced and armed with attitude. Looks like a 2003 JCPenney catalog and drives a Lexus that's never seen a dirt road. The type who thinks forms, fines, and fake smiles fix everything. I'd spotted her once or twice when she was still playing suburban queen in the cul-de-sac next to my land. I didn't think twice until she decided my dad's lodge was a threat to neighborhood peace. See, my lodge sits just outside HOA lines. Just, as in 10 feet beyond the imaginary authority she thinks she has. It's never been part of the HOA. Never will be. But that didn't stop her from strutting up to my porch one Saturday like she owned the place, gripping a clipboard like it was scripture. I was fixing a storm shutter when I heard heels crunching gravel. Turned around, and there she was, perched like a smug hawk. Hi there, she chirped like she hadn't just crossed onto private land. I'm Deborah, the HOA president for Sycamore Bluff. We've had a few complaints about your structure. She said structure like it was a slur. I wiped my hands, raised an eyebrow. You mean my family lodge? She gave a tight little smile. Yes. Well, the logs are untreated, and your woodpile is visible from the road. It's not in line with the community aesthetic. I looked past her, toward miles of forest and empty hills. The community? You mean the raccoons? That didn't sit well. She huffed, pulled out a packet from her clipboard, and handed it over. These are the HOA guidelines. Section 8 covers visibility, landscaping, and acceptable color schemes. I didn't even take it. I'm not in the HOA. Her smile faltered a bit. You're adjacent, and that affects our visual environment. We're protecting property values. Now here's the deal. I don't go looking for fights, but I don't duck them either. I told her plain. This land's been ours since 1952. That lodge came long before her subdivision ever existed. And unless her rules were signed by the Almighty, they don't apply here. I figured that'd be the end. It wasn't. The next week, signs popped up on the gravel road to my place. Private, HOA residents only. They looked official, laminated, staked, and stamped with her phony logo. One blocked the trailhead I use for hikes. Another half covered the wooden sign my dad carved. Welcome to Fox Hollow. I yanked them all and burned them in my fire pit that night. Next day, they were back. Then came the fines, mailed in crisp white envelopes with the HOA letterhead. Violation, unauthorized structure. Violation, unapproved fire pit. Violation, wildlife attractant. Apparently leaving corn out for deer made me public enemy number 1. Again, not in the HOA. I sent a formal cease and desist, citing property law and clear boundary lines. Even offered to meet civilly. Her response? She forwarded my infractions to the power company. That's when it got real. One evening, I come home and the power's out. No storms. No fallen trees. Just dead. Checked the meter. It had been manually disconnected. Called the utility office, and the lady says a complaint had been filed. Unsafe. Vacant structure. Imminent risk. I had to fax over land deeds and legal docs just to get the lights back on. This wasn't neighbor drama anymore. This was a mission. She wanted that lodge gone and didn't care how. What she didn't count on. I've got more patience than a church pew on Easter Sunday. And I'm in it for the long haul. So I started paying attention, gathering evidence, putting together a file. Every letter she mailed. Every ridiculous fine. Snapshots of the signs. Notes on interference. Statements from neighbors she harassed. I wasn't ready to use any of it yet. I foolishly hoped she'd get bored and move on to complaining about someone's garden gnomes. Instead, she kicked it up a notch. One Saturday morning, I spotted tire marks cutting through the path behind my shed. I followed them and found that she, or someone acting on her behalf, had tried to dump a load of contractor debris in the creek. Old siding, chunks of drywall, leftover paint cans. I reported it, cleaned it up myself, and decided it was time to draw a line. I put up a large wooden sign right on the boundary. Private land, not part of the HOA, trespassers will be prosecuted. Clear and direct. Next day, it was missing. Not just gone, replaced. With a plastic sign reading, future site of Sycamore Bluffs Nature Park. Sponsored by your HOA. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about control. It was a land grab. She wanted my property absorbed, transformed into some polished green space for Sunday brunch crowds. My father's handcrafted lodge, likely torn down to make space for a yoga platform and allergy-friendly picnic benches. But what really flipped the switch from patience to all-out battle was the wedding tent. She didn't bother asking. Just rolled up with trucks, vendors, and a florist. Claimed the field behind my barn was perfect for her niece's rustic wedding. Said she got verbal approval from the county. I stood there as they drove stakes into my ground, covered my soybeans with rugs, and lined up white folding chairs like it was a magazine shoot. Then the caterer came up, looked me in the eye, and asked if I could move my John Deere out of their shot. That's when I calmly hit the switch on the manure spreaders. What happened after went viral, but we're not there yet. Because while everyone was busy recording the chaos and wiping cake off their rental suits, I got a call from the fire department. There was a fire, out in the woods, near the lodge, and I knew, before I even turned the siren on, before I saw smoke curling in the sky, before I felt ash coat the back of my throat. I already knew. She'd gone too far this time. I knew it before I reached the rise. Before I spotted the smoke carving its way into the air like a morning flag. Before the radio crackled with dispatch updates. Before the ashes hit my windshield. I knew. That fire wasn't by accident. It wasn't a lightning strike or some careless hiker, and it definitely wasn't a planned burn. It was intentional. And deep down, in that place that always knows when someone's lying, I already knew who did it. By the time I got there, the lodge was history. The flames had torn through the old beams like kindling. 3 decades of my father's labor, reduced to blackened ruins. The porch was caved in. The chimney stood like a grave marker. The elk head he mounted above the fireplace, the one we hunted together when I turned 12, was just dust. Every window shattered. The frames glowed with heat. The firefighters were still circling the area, trying to keep the blaze from jumping into the brush. And I stood there, soaked in sweat and smoke, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Charlie, one of the fire chiefs, approached slowly, helmet under his arm. He looked serious. He didn't need to say anything. But he did. We found a gas can, he said softly, near the edge of the foundation, tucked under some brush. My jaw twitched. Could have been someone dumping garbage. Charlie paused, shook his head. There's more. The way it lit up, it wasn't natural. Accelerants. Multiple points of origin. And, well, you should see for yourself. He led me behind what was once the tool shed. In the mud were footprints. Not firefighter boots. Not hiking shoes. Tactical ones. Light soles. Maybe a size 8 or 9. Too small for any of my crew. No one I knew. Definitely not mine. But you know who wears brand new tactical boots while pretending she's on some suburban recon mission? Karen. 2 days ago, I saw her at the local army surplus store, arguing with the cashier over a camo jacket. I remember because she called it couture combat wear. And now those same boot prints were in the mud behind my dad's burned-out lodge. But the real clincher? That came later. Because I'm not naive. After the bogus power cut stunt, I started putting backup cameras around the property. Nothing obvious. Wildlife cameras, tucked into trees and hidden in the rafters. Motion activated. Synced to the cloud. My little backup plan. And the best part? Even fire can't erase cloud storage. Back at the station, I pulled out my laptop, opened the footage folder, and skipped through endless clips of squirrels and blowing branches. Until there she was, Deborah Witherspoon, HOI royalty, decked out in full camo like a bad movie extra, lugging a red plastic gas can. She crept along the lodge just before nightfall, glanced over her shoulder twice, then poured liquid around the base. She paused, lit what looked like a rag, and dropped it like she was kicking off the Olympics. Flames spread fast. She stood there a moment, then ran. No mask, no hood, no scarf, Just her neatly pressed wilderness gear and a smug grin as she destroyed the last piece of my dad's legacy. She set it on fire and walked away like she was proving some point. I sat frozen for a solid minute, staring at her face glowing in the blaze. I could have outed her right then. Could have walked straight to her pristine little McMansion and slapped cuffs on her in front of the HOI board and her dog groomer. But I waited, because this wasn't just arson anymore. It wasn't only about payback. It was about all the other stuff she'd pulled: phony citations, fake signage, intimidation, theft, lies. So I built my case. Quietly, carefully. I dug into phone records, tracked purchases, got footage from the gas station where she filled the can, talked to neighbors she'd threatened over wind chimes or mailboxes painted the wrong color, dug through public documents, and uncovered something big. The HOA rules she waved around like gospel never actually filed with the county, which meant all the authority she claimed. Pure fiction. And there was more. Turns out she didn't win over the board. She forced them all out. Or rather, faked their resignations. Submitted bogus letters with forged signatures to the HOA newsletter and called it official. No elections. No votes. No meetings. She named herself queen for life, and no one pushed back because she was relentless. And scary. But now I had her. On tape, no less. One question remained. Why burn the lodge? Why go that far? The answer came from her niece, surprisingly. She showed up the next morning, maybe mid-20s, nervous but determined. Said she wanted to say sorry for the wedding fiasco and maybe share something important. Karen had plans. Big ones. She'd been pushing a wellness retreat idea: spa, trails, gazebo, the whole high-priced fantasy. The only thing stopping her was the lodge. And me. She figured torching it would push me out. Make me quit. Sell the land cheap. Get rid of the stubborn guy with property rights. I thanked her, made sure she got home safe, and opened a new file. Arson. Fraud. Forgery. Impersonation. Harassment. Abuse of power. And that was just the start. I wasn't going to bust down her door yet. I wanted her nervous. Wanted her to keep sending bogus fines, posting fake rules, making things worse. But then, 3 days later, as I was finalizing the arrest warrant, I got a call. One of my deputies told me to head to the county clerk's office. There, buried in a newly filed permit application, was Deborah's signature claiming my land as conditionally annexed under her HOA's expansion plan. She had actually filed paperwork trying to claim my burned land. And with that, she made her last, perfect, fatal mistake. She handed me the legal ammo to take down her whole fake kingdom. The only question now wasn't if she'd fall. It was how hard I could make the crash. I could have cuffed her on the spot. Had the video evidence, the fingerprints, the gas can, the paper trail, the motive, and now an official document where she declared legal control over land she didn't even own, right after torching it. But I wasn't after an arrest. I wanted a show. I wanted every smug, passive-aggressive letter she'd ever sent to bounce back at her from the judge's bench. I wanted her fake power, her pretend HOA kingdom, to crash and burn harder than she thought she burned down my lodge. So I got to work, quietly, carefully, and I didn't just zero in on the fire. No, I dug deeper. Looked into her board, her bank history, legal forms, shady contractor payments made in cash. Even combed through zoning complaints and saw a trend. Every person she fined or threatened. They were seniors, single moms, or working folks too swamped with life to fight back. People she thought wouldn't resist. And usually, they didn't. Until now. I reached out to those neighbors, one by one. Sat in their kitchens, drank stale coffee, heard them out. And wow, did they have stories. Miss Lorna had her bird bath dismantled for being an unauthorized water feature. Bill got fined for non-compliant holiday decor. The twist? He's Jewish. She fined him for a menorah. She tacked on late fees for dues that didn't exist, threatened lawsuits from law firms that didn't either. Every penalty came with a warning about liens, her scare tactic. She ran a one-woman regime built on fear, cloaked in red tape, and no one challenged her because no one knew how. But now they had me, and I was through playing nice. I pulled a few strings with friends in state offices. Got a rush review on her sketchy HOA charter. My hunch was right. It was never notarized properly, and most signatures were swiped from an old yard sale sign-up sheet. She literally used names of people who stopped by to buy used crockpots and chairs, then called them voting members of her fake HOA. With that confirmed, I filed a formal report with the county clerk, flagged the HOA as illegal, and started the process to shut them down completely. But that was just step one. I wanted to make sure she couldn't crawl into another community and pull the same stunt again. Meanwhile, she got bolder. Like a raccoon with pearls backed into a corner. She probably noticed I wasn't reacting anymore. No emails, no phone calls, no pushback. So she doubled down. Sent a neighborhood-wide newsletter saying I was being investigated for aggressive behavior, with a blurry photo of me mid-yawn at a gas station, trying to make me look nuts. She said I was harassing her and trying to block HOA growth for personal reasons. Cute. Then she held a mandatory neighborhood meeting in the park across from her place, passed around a petition to get me fired as sheriff. Even had signs made. My favorite read, "No law above the HOA," which, honestly, helped my case. But she wasn't done. She went full delusional. Tried breaking into the ruins of the lodge. My cameras caught her again, this time with a measuring tape and some guy she called a restoration consultant. She was trying to appraise the ashes of the building she burned down herself. I rolled up in uniform. She tried to act casual. "Oh, I'm just reviewing the area for insurance reasons," she said, fake smiling like the sun owed her something. "For your insurance?" I asked, letting it hang in the air. She blinked. "Well, community insurance. We're assuming responsibility now. It's being absorbed into the HOA. It's transitional." I looked down at her guy, standing right over the fire pit my dad had dug with a shovel and a bad back. My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth grind. "Deborah," I said, "you're trespassing. I'm going to need you to leave unless you want another charge added to your list." That shut her up. "You can't be serious. I'm the president of—" "No," I cut her off. "You're the president of a fake group with zero authority, running on forged paperwork, guilty of arson and fraud, and about 5 seconds away from being in cuffs if you don't get off my land." The consultant took one look at me, muttered something about not getting paid enough, and bolted for his truck. Deborah went bright red. She opened her mouth like she was ready to scream, but didn't. Maybe she saw something in my eyes she hadn't before. Not irritation. Something else. The quiet anger of a man who's been too patient for too long. Next morning, I walked into the courthouse and filed the arrest warrant myself. Didn't trust anyone else to do it. Arson, vandalism, filing bogus reports, harassment, fake legal paperwork, pretending to be a public official, tampering with wiring. The list of charges was taller than the golden HOA ornament tree she put up every Christmas. I got the judge's signature that same afternoon. But I wasn't stopping there. I reached out to a few of her victims, folks she'd threatened, fined, or bullied. Gave them a heads up and asked if they wanted front row seats to justice. They showed up with lawn chairs, popcorn. One guy even brought a megaphone. When we rolled up to her pristine white house, she was mid-HOA meeting in the yard. Folding tables full of clipboards, HOA banners everywhere. Her back was to us when I walked up with my deputies. She was ranting about hedge height when I called her name. "Deborah Witherspoon," I said, calm as can be. She turned, clearly irritated, then stopped cold. I stepped up and read every charge aloud. Her smugness shifted to confusion, then to rage, then to shock. I could see the exact second she realized the man she'd harassed for months, the one whose property she torched, wasn't just some guy with a badge. He was about to dismantle everything she'd built. "You can't arrest me," she yelled. "I'm the president. This is illegal." I held up the warrant. "This says otherwise." As we led her to the cruiser, her neighbors applauded. Someone even played the national anthem on a Bluetooth speaker. She yelled about lawsuits and civil rights, then flopped onto her hydrangeas in fake despair. Didn't help. Right before we drove off, one of my deputies leaned in and asked, "You still want to hit her for the wedding tent?" I grinned. "Oh, I'm just getting started." Court came quicker than expected. Not because the system is fast, it's not, but because I made it my mission to ensure every detail was bulletproof. I wanted no loopholes. I wanted her walking in full of false confidence, then watching it all fall apart. She showed up in a beige pantsuit that screamed innocence, flanked by some second-rate lawyer probably charging by the minute to pretend she had a shot. The courtroom wasn't packed, but the right people were there. Miss Lorna with her birdbath photos, Bill with his mailbox printouts, half a dozen others carrying fake fines and HOA threats she'd tossed around like party favors. I sat straight, uniformed, not smug, just ready. Karen, because no one called her Deborah anymore, tried her usual routine. She downplayed the fire, said she was clearing brush, spilled gas by accident, didn't know the lodge mattered, claimed it was abandoned, and she was helping the community. Her lawyer threw out words like misunderstanding, civic duty, clerical error. Then the video played. Crystal clear footage of her in camo, pouring accelerant around the lodge, lighting it up like she was thrilled. That was it. You could feel the silence take over. Even her lawyer stopped talking. The judge raised an eyebrow and asked to see it again. They replayed it in total silence. After that, the only question left was how bad it would get. The judge didn't go easy. 5 years of probation, community service, full restitution, court-verified numbers for the damage, the property, the emotional fallout. She winced at the total. Over $800,000. Her insurance? Didn't cover arson. That meant her car, savings, house, everything. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Just sat still and watched her world crumble under the weight of her ego. But the real win wasn't that day. It came a week later, when I filed a civil case on top of the criminal one. It wasn't about the cash. I already had partial insurance and plans to rebuild. I wanted the truth public. I wanted every bogus fine, every forged document, every sham signature dragged into daylight. I wanted the record to show she built everything on lies. And it worked. The county audited her HOA charter and threw it out. No legal standing, which meant every decision she ever made as president was invalid. Every lien, every threat, every dollar shaken out of neighbors, gone. The board, if you could even call it that, was dismantled. Then the bank stepped in. With her house tied up in court payments and no HOA funds left to cover anything, she had no choice but to list her McMansion. Last I heard, it's still sitting there, unsold, price slashed, with a droopy for sale sign out front. Nobody wants to live in the house that the HOA dictator once ruled like a throne. And the neighbors she made miserable? They threw a real cookout the weekend after the ruling. Full-on spread. Ribs, cornbread, ice-cold beer, kids running barefoot through sprinklers. No clipboards, no rule books, no HOA bans on plastic forks. Just people smiling again, laughing. You could feel the weight lift. Miss Lorna brought me a plate and said it felt like the end of a never-ending winter. I knew exactly what she meant. As for the lodge, I rebuilt it. Not identical. Some things just can't be replaced. But this time I used fireproof materials, reinforced the structure, added solar panels, and built a stone fire pit right out front. I even carved a new sign in the same style as my dad's, with one little update. Beneath Fox Hollow Lodge, I burned in a new line. Karen-proof since 2024. It cracked me up. I think my dad would have liked it too. The final touch came with her community service. Court-ordered, she got assigned to the county maintenance crew, scrubbing graffiti, repainting benches, and cleaning the public restrooms at the very park she once tried to claim was HOA only. I drove by once. Saw her in a neon vest, hose in hand, pressure washing the pavement while a bunch of teenagers filmed her on their phones. She tried to dodge the camera, but someone yelled, "Hey, aren't you the lady who burned down a forest?" And that expression on her face almost made me feel bad for her. Almost. She still makes noise sometimes. Sends in appeals. Writes letters claiming she was set up, misunderstood, unfairly targeted. But nothing sticks. Every agency already has the proof. Every judge has already seen the videos. Her name's mud, and even the HOA newsletter, now dead, of course, couldn't spin it into anything clean. But I don't really think about her much these days. I spend more time up at the new lodge now, fixing it up, doing some hunting in the fall, sipping coffee on the deck while the fog drifts through the trees like smoke that isn't here to ruin anything. I planted wildflowers where the old foundation stood. Let the forest reclaim what was taken. I even rebuilt the bench I made for my dad. Gave it a darker stain, sealed it twice, bolted it down good. Every now and then, folks ask if I wish I'd locked her up sooner. If I regret not throwing the book at her the first time she stepped onto my land with her fake rules and that clipboard. And sure, in another version of this story, maybe I would have. But in this one, I'm glad I waited. Because it wasn't just about payback. It was about making it clear to people like her. You can't stomp around pretending the rules don't apply to you and expect to get away clean. You want to ignore the law? That's your call. Just don't be shocked when the guy you're pushing turns out to be the one who signs the warrant. In the end, all she had to do was stay out of my business. Respect a line that never belonged to her. But Karen never met a boundary She didn't want to claim. Never heard a no she couldn't twist into a maybe. So she lost everything. Me? I gained peace. And maybe, just maybe, a hell of a story to share when someone new moves in and asks whatever happened to the HOA around here. I usually smile, nod toward the hills, and say, let's just say they messed with the wrong place. Then I offer them a cup of coffee. No forms, no fines, no nonsense. Just neighbors. The way it ought to be.